Ryan had always been the responsible son, the one who never asked for much. The one who always picked up the slack. He had convinced himself, over the years, that his sacrifices were worth it, that helping his family was just what a good son did. But nothing could have prepared him for the gut-wrenching betrayal he uncovered that evening. It was supposed to be a quick visit. He had worked extra shifts this month, stretching his budget just a little thinner, so he could drop off some extra cash for his parents' utilities. He didn't mind, that's what they always said. Anyway, Ryan didn't have kids like Nicole. Ryan had a stable job. Ryan didn't have the same burdens they did. The moment he stepped through the doorway, he knew something was wrong. The house, usually dimly lit and quiet, was alive with laughter. High-pitched giggles echoed from the living room. His mother, Elaine, was sitting on the couch, bouncing his nephew on her knee, looking healthier than she had in months. His niece sat beside her, legs swinging, while the youngest was busy stacking colorful blocks on the carpet. His mother, the same woman who, just a week ago, had insisted through ragged coughs that she was too frail to watch his daughter. Ava, for even a single night. Ryan froze in the doorway, the envelope in his hand suddenly feeling like lead. Elaine's laughter died the second she saw him. For a brief moment, just a fraction of a second, Ryan saw something cross her face. Guilt? Regret? Fear? Then, just as quickly, it was gone, replaced with the same practiced, saccharine smile she always wore when she needed to smooth things over. Ryan, what a surprise. I wasn't expecting you. She sounded too cheerful, too rehearsed. Ryan's jaw clenched. His eyes flickered to his father, Walter, who sat in his recliner, staring at the TV, avoiding eye contact. Typical. Nicole, of course, was the only one unfazed. She merely smirked, like this was all some inside joke he wasn't in on. Ryan swallowed the bitterness rising in his throat and forced himself to speak. You told me you couldn't watch Ava because of your health. The room fell into silence. Elaine hesitated, just for a moment. Then, like clockwork, Nicole swooped in, her voice dripping with condescension. Mom has too much on her plate. We wouldn't want her to overdo it. Ryan felt his pulse hammering in his ears. He stared at his mother, at the way she rubbed her temple, feigning exhaustion, as if he was the one causing her stress. His voice was deadly quiet when he repeated, "She's literally babysitting right now." Elaine sighed, shaking her head, like he was a child throwing a tantrum. Ryan, it's different. Nicole needs my help. Raising 3 kids alone isn't easy. The world tilted beneath him. A sharp, unrelenting pressure built in his chest. That was it. That was the moment everything changed. A lifetime of being second best, of being the afterthought, the forgotten son, the one who only mattered when the bills were due, crystallized into a single, unbearable truth. His mother had lied to him. Not just this time, not just today. For years, Ryan felt something inside him snap. Does Nicole need you more than I do? His voice was calm, but the air buzzed with tension. Walter shifted uncomfortably. Nicole rolled her eyes. Elaine? She just shook her head, as if he was being ridiculous. But it wasn't ridiculous. It was the truth. She had spent years making excuses, spinning lies, convincing him that she was helpless, that she needed his support, while treating him like he was nothing more than a paycheck. Ryan's grip on the envelope tightened. His breathing was sharp and measured. His mother had never been too sick to help him. She just didn't want to. And the worst part? Nicole had known all along. She thrived under their mother's favoritism, comfortable in the cocoon of never having to take responsibility for anything. Ryan's stomach churned with rage and realization. He was never part of this family. Not really. He was just a safety net. The backup plan. The ATM. And the worst part? They didn't even feel bad about it. Nicole was still smirking. Elaine was still playing the victim. Walter was still silent. Ryan took a slow, steady breath. Then, with ice in his voice, he said 4 words that sealed their fate. I finally understand now. And without another word, he walked out. Ryan's footsteps were heavy as he walked away from his parents' house. But inside, he felt weightless, like something inside him had finally snapped loose. He finally understood. For years, he had convinced himself that his sacrifices meant something, that paying his parents' bills, helping Nicole, and stepping in whenever they needed money was just what a good son did. But now he knew the truth. He wasn't part of this family. He was their financial safety net. And he was done. The next morning, Ryan sat at his kitchen table, phone in hand. His fiancée, Emma, sat across from him, watching quietly, knowing exactly what he was about to do. He took a deep breath, opened his banking app, and began to cancel everything. Rent, gone. Utilities, gone. Car insurance, grocery deliveries, every single recurring payment, gone. It took less than 5 minutes to erase years of financial servitude. The last thing he did was send one final text to Ella. "You're on your own now. Good luck." Then, with a steady hand, he blocked her number, blocked Nicole, blocked Walter. Emma exhaled, a small, proud smile on her lips. "How do you feel?" Ryan leaned back in his chair, staring at the now silent phone. For the first time in his life, he felt free. It started almost immediately. Ryan's phone lit up like a Christmas tree, one missed call after another. Elaine, Nicole, even Walter, who had never lifted a finger to fix anything before, was suddenly calling him nonstop. Ryan ignored every single one. Then came the emails. The first ones were soft, pleading. "Elaine, Ryan, sweetheart, please call me back. We need to talk. We're family." Nicole, "Oh my God. Ryan, are you seriously doing this? Grow up." Then, when he didn't respond, the guilt trips started. "Elaine, I can't believe you'd do this to your own mother. After everything I've done for you?" Walter, "Son, don't be petty. Your sister and the kids need stability." Ryan laughed out loud at that one. He didn't respond. He wouldn't respond. He had nothing left to give them. Then, things took a turn. Elaine, ever the master manipulator, took it public. She posted a dramatic, tear-filled Facebook rant about how her ungrateful son had abandoned his poor, sick mother. She painted herself as the selfless matriarch who had given everything for her children, only to be cruelly cast aside. Ryan's blood boiled, but he didn't take the bait. Instead, he did something far worse. He told the truth, without anger, without emotion, just cold, hard facts. He posted, "For years, I paid my parents' bills while my mother lied about being sick to avoid babysitting my daughter. She refused to watch my child for a single night but was perfectly fine watching my sister's kids full-time. I was used. I was lied to. I'm done." Then, he logged off. The backlash against Elaine and Nicole was instant. Family members rallied around him. Distant relatives sent messages of support. Even neighbors chimed in, commenting that they had seen Elaine gardening and shopping on days when she had claimed to be bedridden. Nicole? She got it the worst. Her carefully curated image of a struggling single mom crumbled overnight. People started asking questions. Why was she constantly taking vacations? Where was all the money going? Ryan didn't even have to say a word. The truth was finally out. And they couldn't spin their way out of it this time. Ryan had expected more calls, more desperate pleas. But instead, silence. For the first time in years, his phone wasn't buzzing with requests, demands, or guilt trips. Emma watched him carefully over breakfast. "Think they finally gave up?" she asked. Ryan smirked, sipping his coffee. Not a chance. Sure enough, 3 days later, the knock came. Through the peephole, he saw them. Elaine, standing on his porch, looking desperate. Ryan took a slow, measured breath, his hand resting on the doorknob. This was it, the final confrontation. And this time, he wasn't the one begging. The knock came just as Ryan expected. 3 days after he cut them off. 3 days of missed calls, frantic voicemails, guilt-ridden emails. 3 days of complete and utter silence from him. Through the peephole, he saw them, Elaine and Walter. His mother's face was red and puffy, likely from a combination of fake tears and real frustration. His father, standing just behind her, looked older, smaller, his hands stuffed deep into his pockets. Ryan took his time before opening the door. He had waited years for this moment. With a steady breath, he pulled it open but remained in the doorway, arms crossed, blocking their way inside. Elaine started immediately, her voice trembling as she put on the performance of a lifetime. "Ryan, sweetheart, please, we need to talk." Ryan raised an eyebrow but said nothing. His father cleared his throat, a rare move for a man who had spent most of Ryan's life watching from the sidelines. Son, your mother is devastated. We both are. Ryan tilted his head. No, you're not. Walter angry. Elaine's voice broke dramatically. We never meant to hurt you. Ryan's jaw tightened. He had expected this exact performance, the crocodile tears, the carefully placed regret, the emotional manipulation. But they weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry they got caught. He leaned against the doorframe. You didn't mean to hurt me? He scoffed. You just didn't mean for me to find out. Silence. Elaine's expression flickered. For just a second, she dropped the act, her lips pressing together into a tight, thin line. Ryan's stomach twisted. There it was. The truth. She wasn't sorry. She was angry, angry that her plan had failed. Angry that her safety net had snapped. And she wasn't done playing the game. Sweetheart, I know you're upset, but cutting us off like this? It's cruel. Ryan's fingers tightened into a fist. Cruel. She had the audacity to call him cruel? He had sacrificed years for them. Paid their bills, covered their rent, took care of their responsibilities while they lavished Nicole with love and excuses. And now that he was gone? Now they wanted to call him cruel? He exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. You have options, he said, his voice measured. Dad can get a job. You can downsize. Nicole can finally start contributing. Elaine's face darkened. Ryan, she snapped, her voice sharp. We can't make rent this month. The electric company is threatening to shut off our power. Is that what you want? Your parents living in the dark? There it was. The guilt trip. The final, desperate attempt to manipulate him. Ryan almost laughed. He met her gaze, his expression cold, unreadable. You had money for first-class tickets. He said smoothly. Figure it out. Elaine's face drained of color. Walter looked down at his shoes. For the first time in his entire life, Ryan saw something flicker across his father's face, shame. Elaine. She scoffed, shaking her head. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Ryan's lips curled into a bitter smirk. Name one thing, Mom. Elaine blinked. What? One thing, asterisk. He stepped forward, his voice low, deadly calm. One thing you've done for me in the last 10 years that wasn't about what I could do for you, asterisk. The silence was deafening. Elaine's, then closed. Walter turned away. She had no answer. Ryan gave her a slow, knowing nod. That's what I thought. Without another word, he stepped back and shut the door in their faces. Elaine pounded on the door, shouting something about how he would regret this. But Ryan didn't hear it. Because for the first time in his life, he didn't care. Ryan had barely shut the door before his mother's furious pounding began. You'll regret this. You hear me, Ryan? You can't just abandon your family. Her voice was shrill, shaking with rage, a stark contrast to the pitiful sobs she had tried just moments ago. Ryan stood there, his back against the door, breathing deep and steady. For years, he had been the one on the other side, begging for their approval, waiting for their love. Not anymore. The pounding faded, and with it, the weight that had sat on his shoulders for decades. For the first time, Ryan felt light, free, untouchable. But his mother? She wasn't done yet. By the next morning, Ryan's phone was a battlefield. First, the texts. His mother. I raised you better than this. You should be ashamed of yourself. His father. Son, let's talk this out. Don't do anything you can't take back. Nicole. Wow, you're actually serious. You're a selfish piece of sh*t. You know that? Ryan didn't respond. Then came the emails. Elaine. You're letting your poor mother suffer. Is that what you want? To see me in pain? Walter. We don't deserve this kind of treatment. Ryan. You've really changed. Nicole. Everyone is talking about what a cold-hearted bastard you are. Have fun dying alone. Ryan rolled his eyes and blocked their emails. 2. Then, the real attack came. Elaine took it to Facebook. The post was long, dramatic, filled with lies. I never thought I'd see the day when my own son would abandon his mother in her time of need. After everything I have done for him, after all the sacrifices, he repays me by turning his back on his family. I always told myself I raised a good man. But I guess I was wrong. I am heartbroken. Please, pray for us. The comments flooded in. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who didn't know the full story, who only saw the carefully curated version she wanted them to see, rushed to comfort her. Oh Elaine, I'm so sorry. I can't believe Ryan would do this to you. Kids these days have no respect for their parents. Don't worry, sweetie. Karma will get him. Ryan laughed bitterly as he scrolled through the comments. This was so predictable. She was spinning the story, making herself the victim, making him the villain. But Ryan? He had something better than lies. He had the truth. Ryan opened his own social media and typed out his response. No emotion, no rage, just cold, hard facts. For years, I paid my parents' bills while my mother lied about being sick to avoid babysitting my daughter. She refused to watch my child for one night but was perfectly fine watching my sister's kids full-time. I was used. I was lied to. I'm done. Then, he posted it, and logged off. It didn't take long. The backlash against Elaine was immediate. Relatives who had been on the fence started messaging him privately, offering their support. Friends who had always suspected something was off shared their own stories of toxic family dynamics. And then came the neighbors. Elaine's own neighbors started commenting, saying they had seen her out gardening, shopping, walking around the neighborhood on days she had claimed to be too sick to move. People started questioning her story. Even her own siblings messaged Ryan, saying things like, I always knew your mom played favorites, but I didn't realize how bad it was. She got wrecked. Her perfect struggling single mother act crumbled as people dug into her spending habits. The luxury vacations, the shopping sprees, the fact that she never worked a full-time job. Her friends, the ones who had always backed her up, started turning on her. And just like that, the illusion fell apart. Ryan didn't have to say another word. The truth was doing the work for him. 3 days later, another knock at Ryan's door. He knew who it was before he even looked. But this time, he wasn't going to be the one begging. Ryan knew they would come. He had been waiting for this moment. It had been 3 days since his mother's Facebook sob story had backfired spectacularly. 3 days since his post, the unfiltered truth, had shattered their carefully constructed narrative. Now, they had nothing left but desperation. And desperation made people dangerous. It was late, just past sunset, when the knock came. Ryan glanced at his fiancée, Emma, who sat curled up on the couch. Their daughter Mia asleep upstairs. They exchanged a look. They both knew. With a slow, measured breath, Ryan stood, walked to the door, and pulled it open. There they were, Elaine and Walter. His mother's eyes were red-rimmed, though Ryan wasn't sure if the tears were real or strategic. His father, as always, stood silent, a shadow of a man, a bystander in his own life. Elaine stepped forward, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. Ryan, sweetheart, we need to talk. Ryan didn't move. He didn't invite them in. Didn't soften. Didn't break. Not this time. Talk. His voice was cold, sharp as glass. Elaine's breath hitched, but she nodded. Your father and I, we're in trouble. Ryan crossed his arms. I know. Her lips trembled. Ryan, please, they're threatening to evict us. The power bill is overdue. The bank, we're out of options. Ryan tilted his head, studying her. How many times had she said this? How many emergencies How many times had he scrambled? Had he sacrificed, because she made him believe it was his responsibility? And now, when it was real, when she actually had no way out, she was begging him again. But the difference was, he didn't care anymore. Elaine reached for his arm. Her touch familiar, manipulative. Ryan, we're your parents. You don't want to see us suffer. Do you? Ryan took a small step back. Just out of reach. I don't want anything from you. Walter cleared his throat, his voice rough. Son, be reasonable. Ryan's eyes snapped to him. Reasonable? Was it reasonable when they had spent years using him? Was it reasonable when they let Nicole get everything while he was nothing more than a wallet? Was it reasonable when Lead, refusing to watch Mia while taking care of Nicole's kids like they were royalty? No, it wasn't reasonable. And neither was he. Ryan inhaled deeply, letting the silence stretch, watching as Elaine's desperation curdled into frustration. You have options. He said, Dad can get a job. You can move to a smaller place. Nicole can finally step up. Elaine flinched at that last one. Walter let out a slow, pained breath. Nicole won't help us. Ryan's eyebrows lifted. Oh? Elaine looked away, her hands curling into fists. She said she's not our problem. Ryan couldn't help it. He laughed. Elaine's face twisted with anger. This isn't funny, Ryan. But it was. Nicole, the golden child, the one who had never lifted a finger, the one who had always been their first choice, had abandoned them the second they became an inconvenience. Elaine must have realized what he was thinking because her voice turned sharp. Desperate. Ryan, we made mistakes. I know we did, but we're still your family. Ryan's lips curled into a smirk. That's funny. That's exactly what you told me whenever I asked why Nicole mattered more. Elaine stiffened, her face going pale. She had nothing to say. No excuse, no lie, no manipulation left. Because finally, she knew. She had lost. Good. I was your backup plan. Mom, your safety net, not your son. And now, you're out of options. You made your choice. Now live with it. And with that, he shut it in their faces. Ryan stood there for a moment, listening. He heard his mother curse, his father mutter something, and then, slow footsteps retreating. And then, silence. For the first time in his entire life. They were gone. No more guilt, no more expectations, no more manipulation. Just freedom. For the first time in his life, Ryan was truly free. No more guilt-laced phone calls. No more emergency bills conveniently landing in his lap. No more being treated like a walking ATM. And, even with all the weight lifted from his shoulders, a tiny, nagging voice whispered in the back of his mind. Would they really give up that easily? The answer came 2 months later, wrapped in an envelope with his mother's familiar handwriting. Ryan stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a generic holiday card. One of those store-bought, impersonal messages wishing you peace, love, enjoy this Christmas season. But it was the photo tucked inside that made his stomach twist. It was a family picture. His parents, Nicole, her kids, all smiling like nothing had happened. And on the back, in his mother's elegant, looping script, were 3 simple words. We miss you. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they had done. Just 3 words meant to erase a lifetime of betrayal. Ryan felt a cold, bitter laugh bubble up in his chest. After everything, after all the lies, the manipulation, the years of being used, this was their attempt at reconciliation? He stared at the card for a long time before standing, walking to the trash can, and tossing it in without a second thought. Some doors are meant to stay closed. A week later, just as he and Emma were decorating their Christmas tree, the doorbell rang. Ryan's body tensed. They wouldn't, would they? Emma gave him a look, already knowing what he was thinking. I'll get it, she whispered, squeezing his hand before heading to the door. Ryan listened, every nerve in his body on edge as he heard low voices. Then Emma returned, her expression unreadable. It's your dad. Ryan felt his stomach drop. Just his dad? No. That was new. He took a slow breath before nodding. Let him in. Walter looked older, not just physically, but in the way his shoulders slumped. The deep-set exhaustion in his face. He hesitated before stepping inside, standing awkwardly near the couch. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Walter cleared his throat. Your mother doesn't know I'm here. Ryan's brows lifted slightly. That was new, too. Why are you here, Dad? Walter hesitated again, running a hand over his face. Then he let out a long, weary sigh. Because I owe you an apology. A real one. Ryan stilled. Hey. He had expected more guilt trips, more justifications, more manipulations. His father continued, voice rough. I failed you. His hands trembled slightly. Not just recently, your whole life. Ryan said nothing, waiting. I let your mother have her way. I watched her favor Nicole. I watched her use you. And I never said a damn thing. Walter exhaled shakily. Because it was easier. Something in Ryan's chest tightened. Because for the first time, his father was owning it. Not excusing it. Not defending it. Just saying the truth out loud. Walter looked down at his hands. I don't expect forgiveness. He swallowed hard. But I need you to know, you were right to walk away. Ryan didn't know what to say. Because, for once, he wasn't angry. For once, he saw his father not as the passive enabler, but as a man who was finally realizing what he had lost. It didn't erase the past. But it was something. Walter stood. We're moving in with Nicole. Ryan's lips twitched. That should be fun. Walter huffed a tired laugh. She's not happy about it either. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Nicole, not happy? Now that was ironic. Walter sighed. She thought it would be easy. But she's realizing what you already knew. So, it had finally happened. Nicole, the golden child. Never lifted a finger. Getting a taste of what she had let happen to him for years. Walter headed toward the door but hesitated one last time. Merry Christmas, son. You have a beautiful family. Ryan. Then. Walter. And Ryan? Ryan stood there for a long time, staring at the blinking lights of the Christmas tree, listening to Emma's laughter from the kitchen, hearing Mia giggle upstairs. This was his family. Not the one he had been born into, but the one he had built. And for the first time in his life, that was enough.